welcome to Everett Public Schools boardroom on this beautiful fall day. We are going to change the order of business slightly this evening. We do not have a quorum, so we are unable to officially start our meeting tonight. So rather than hold you folks up, we are going to administer the oath of office for our newly appointed director, which you will all get to see and meet him before the meeting starts, so that we then have a quorum and we can begin. So without further ado, Dr. Cohn.
Thank you. So normally this is a part of the board meeting, but we're going to do it to establish a quorum so that we can proceed, all right? And I'd like to introduce to you Jamyang Dorji Nankar, who was selected by the board at their last special meeting designed to complete the process for filling the vacancy created by Ted Winter's resignation. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the administration of the oath of office now. All right? You ready? Okay. So repeat after me, please. I, Jamyang Dorji Nankar.
I, Jamyang Dorji Nankar.
Do solemnly affirm.
Do solemnly affirm.
That I will support the Constitution and laws of the United States.
That I will support the Constitution and the laws of the United States.
And the Constitution and laws of the State of Washington.
And the Constitution and the laws of the State of Washington.
And that I will faithfully
and
impartially
impartially
perform and discharge the duties
perform and discharge the duties
of the office of Everett School District Number 2.
and the office of Everett
School District Number 2. Director at Large. Position 1. For a 15-month term.
For a 15-month term.
According to the law.
According to the law.
And to the best of my ability.
To the best of my ability.
Congratulations, you're appointed. Would you like to start the meeting, or would you like to call us family up for some pictures?
I think that we should introduce the family and have a photo opportunity with the administrator of the oath.
My family, Dolkar, and I have 2 kids, both from the Everett School District, Zenden and Zigden, who are here.
And then
Do you have pictures?
Yes,
we're
we're
gonna
going to
do a
take
picture.
pictures.
Yeah,
So let's bring the family up here. Let's get a picture of the family first, and then we'll collect it. If you'll stay, we'll go ahead and get the board members will collect with you. And then we'll do one with the board members. Probably going to be a little tighter.
Get close and friendly. Yeah.
Sideways?
That's
Sideways.
okay.
All right, 1, 2, 3. I'm going to take one more. Okay, just the board.
Now the board members together.
Thank you. So 1, 2, 3. And one more. Thank you.
Okay, without further ado, we will call the meeting to order, and please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Will the secretary please call the roll?
President Mason,
Present.
Vice President Andrews, Director Lassane,
Present?
Director Mitchell, Director Nankar,
Present.
Student Representative Pollock,
Present.
Student Representative Tran.
Present.
Thank you. Our first item of business tonight is the adoption of the agenda. Dr. Cohn, may you please review tonight's agenda for us?
Yes, consistent with the plans established at your 2018 Summer Planning Workshop, tonight's agenda contains several elements related to both the district's strategic plan and the board's annual goals. There is this evening a segment for routine business, a segment for recognition items, a segment for board comments, a segment for the superintendent's report, a segment for strategic progress reporting, one for unfinished business, a segment for new business, a segment for public comment, and there is a segment for upcoming agenda items. The following changes have been made since we published the agenda to you. Item 10.1, Superintendent's Report will be updated during the meeting, as is customary for regular meetings. Item 15.1 was added to the agenda. The agenda area is upcoming agenda items. The Economic Alliance Snohomish STEM Summit is this week, and at least 3 of you are attending, so we're publishing a special meeting for that. In all other respects, the agenda is as we published it to you. The board, of course, may elect to change the order of business by a majority vote of the members. This is not, however, the time during your agenda to request items be removed from the consent agenda. As we presented the agenda with its amendment to you, we ask your approval thereof.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So move.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The motion carries. Next item of business is recognition. And this afternoon, we have several recognitions, beginning with a very special employee of the district, someone who has been with us since 1968. And I believe Dr. Lancaster is going to introduce to us Ernie Brockman.
And I'm going to ask Ernie to come up to the podium. I am very honored to recognize Ernie Brockman for his 50 years of employment with the Everett Public Schools. I first met Harab Rahman in 2001 at Sequoia High School, where I was an administrator and he was a substitute. Immediately, he introduced himself, shook my hand like he does with everyone, and began both telling and listening to stories. We had an immediate connection. Ernie is a master storyteller and a master of relationships. He understands that the art of connecting with people begins with knowing a little bit about who they are. Students sense his authenticity and know that he's genuinely interested in them and respond positively to his approach. Harab Rahman has worked for the Everett Public Schools for 50 years. He started as a German teacher at Evergreen Middle School. He was there for 1 year. Then he spent 10 years at Everett High School, where he supervised the World Language Program before moving to Cascade High School, where he worked until he retired in 1993. Well, retired, but he kept working. First as a substitute and more recently as a tutor for one-on-one students with special needs in our district. When substituting at a school, Harab Rahman made the rounds before and after school with a coffee cup in one hand and a large smile on his face. He checked in on everyone he saw to spread his good cheer. Harab Rahman was a favored substitute because teachers understood that he knew how to connect with students and there wouldn't be any problems when he was in their classroom. Students appreciated his unrelenting caring and kindness and worked hard to make Harab Rahman proud. Recently, he shared the story of a special education student he was tutoring who finally completed her first year of German and got credit for that. His pride in her success was evident. Generations of students in the Everett Public Schools have benefited from Ernie's unrelenting optimism, his kindness, and his willingness to take time to learn a little bit about the student, share a story, and celebrate their successes with him. We are a better organization for him having been in it, and I'm proud to recognize him for his 50 years of service to the Everett Public Schools.
Thank you so very much. I appreciate it. I really, Dr. Cohen and members of the board, I just appreciate the fact that that I was, to be here. We were in Portland, and my oldest daughter, by the way, I have 6 children and grandchildren that are teachers, and most of them are here tonight. And my son served many, many years in the Everett Police. He was top sergeant, and we just retired. But anyway, God's been very good to me. I came to this country in 1950 when I was 19. And I was a milkman. Then I became a manager of a dairy. Then became a business executive for a large company in Oregon. And I served as an intelligence officer in the American Army during the Korean War. I'm sorry, but this is so overwhelming to me. So anyway, and I'd like to just introduce my wife, professor of clinical nursing at the Northwest University in Kirkland. Honey, please stand. If you don't mind, Sally, just a moment. I'd like to have my children stand. Stand up, guys. Don't be afraid. I really appreciate this, and God bless you guys, and I love you all.
Well, we have a little bit something for you, so don't go away. And we'd like to ask your family to come forward as well, because we love pictures, and we're going to take another one with all of you.
That's very kind.
Come on up.
Again, we do recognize you a lot. Yes. Like to recognize. You okay?
Nice.
So,
Squeeze on in, everybody.
on behalf of Everett Public Schools, we would like to thank you for your excellence in service, for advocating for youth, and for representing the school district with exemplary
Thank you, everyone. I love you guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is what he's saying. That's what this is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda, we would like to recognize and welcome our new administrative staff, and I believe we have several individuals introducing the folks tonight.
Thank you. Liz, you want to come? It's my pleasure to introduce Leslie Diaz, who is part of our Recruit Washington Teachers Grant. She joined Everett Public Schools as a Diversifying Pathways Program Coordinator. Ms. Diaz's employment history reflects a dedication to the service of low-income, first-generation college students and students with disabilities. Her experiences assisted marginalized students with admissions, outreach, advising, student affairs, financial aid, and employment solutions have defined her professional career. She has most recently served as the bilingual career and completion coach for the Advanced Manufacturing Training and Education Center at Everett Community College. She also worked as a digital marketing specialist for Everett Community College. Before her work in the Everett area, Ms. Diaz worked as a program coordinator at Washington State University upon earning her Bachelor's of Science in Sociology and Spanish with a minor in Comparative Ethnic Studies. Welcome,
Thank
Leslie.
you. Thank you. Thank you, and I just would like to say that I am very excited to be a part of Everett Public Schools and to be working with our students, our bilingual students of color and their families. So I'm very thankful once again, and I'm excited to work here. Gracias.
I have the pleasure of introducing Dee Smith-Akins. She is not new to the district.
We'll call you up afterwards for some photos.
Sorry. Thank you, Leslie. Dee is not new to the district. She has been a teacher at Everett Public Schools for 11 years. She's joined our Equity and Access team as facilitator, serving all of the district schools. She has served, again, as special ed teacher at Everett High School since 2008-09. Prior to joining Everett Public Schools, Ms. Smith-Akins taught English and special education at Nimitz Senior High School in Aldine, Texas. She holds a Bachelor's of Science degree from Prairie View A&M University and a major in political science, a minor in sociology, and a Master's of Arts in Teaching from Seattle Pacific University, and a second master's in public administration from Villanova University. Both Dee and Leslie have hit the ground running. Thank you, Dee, for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you. I look forward to working with the families and teachers and all the staff at Everett Public School District, and thanks for the opportunity and for the professional growth.
It's my pleasure this evening to, where are you, Sarah? To introduce to you Sarah Yuck Lee. With the departure of Jennifer Farmer, we sought and looked far and wide to find the best candidate, and clearly Sarah is that person. Sarah has over 17 years in public procurement, much of it up in Canada under the Department of National Defense, Agricultural Canada, Correction Services of Canada, Public Works General Services for Canada. And she had a funny saying in both interviews. She's bought anything from grenade storage containers to chicken semen counters, and she can't talk about one and doesn't want to talk about the other. She moved to the U.S. and married Orion, and they have 5 children. They live up in the Arlington area. And she worked closely in the same line of work with King County and most recently the city of Linwood. And I think during the interview, she really dazzled, particularly with the superintendent's candidate when asked, why do you want to come here? And she had done her homework and she'd looked and she liked the open learning environment. She liked the focus on diversity and inclusion and just the purpose in which we serve. So she's a delightful addition to our team, and please welcome Sarah Yuck Lee.
I don't know that there's much that I want to say at this time other than I'm really pleased to be here. I think that I have a chance to blossom, and I look forward to working with all of the departments.
Welcome.
Sarah, welcome aboard.
Thank you very much.
So we'll do a picture with you.
Betty was selling. How are we going to take her picture?
Turn the camera around.
Selfies.
Selfies, yeah.
I know I don't have to lean down. I keep telling people that. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Kathy Reeves. Kathy is our new communications director. She comes to us from the healthcare industry, most recently in healthcare communications and marketing from the Everett Clinic, and prior to that, she was the National Vice President of Marketing for the DeVita Medical Group. Kathy served as the Director of Strategic Planning and Marketing for Valley General Hospital, and she served as the Marketing and Communications Manager at Overlake Hospital in Bellevue. Before entering healthcare, she worked for Young Life in Oregon. Kathy's received her bachelor's degree in pre-med and sports medicine from Linfield College and her executive master's of business administration from the University of Washington. We were absolutely delighted to be able to offer her the position of director of marketing, and we are so looking forward to the work that she's going to be doing with us, with you, and with the district in the advancement of the district's brand in the community. Welcome, Kathy.
I just want to say I'm really glad to be here. Everybody's been very welcoming, and I've loved every minute of it. And part of the reason why I like my job is because I'm always behind the camera, so I didn't mean to hand it off. But thank you very much.
And now it is my pleasure and honor to introduce Sarah Mack. Sarah is our new General Counsel for the district. General Counsel provides legal advice and assistance to administrators, to the superintendent regarding legal affairs, public records, risk management, contracts, and board policies and procedures. And you know very well that the records management and the public records business has become a booming industry in the state of Washington. Sarah was recently a career law clerk for United States District Judge Ricardo Martinez in the U.S. District Court for the Western District of Washington. Previously, she was a principal partner at the law firm of Patterson, Buchanan, Forbes, and Leach in Seattle. She's also worked as a pro se law clerk and a civil rights law intern following her graduation from the Brooklyn School of Law. There she earned her JD, her Juris Doctor, and in 2002. Sarah was admitted to the Washington State Bar in 2002 and to the Oregon Bar in 2009, so just in case we get sued in Oregon, right? She received her bachelor's degree from Boston University with a major in public relations and a minor in French language and literature. Do you ever submit briefs in French?
No, but I've translated in French.
Oh, very good. She's worked with school districts across the state of Washington, including Everett Public Schools, on a variety of state and federal litigation issues. We are delighted to have her aboard, and we want to introduce and welcome her to our organization. I present our new General Counsel, Sarah Mack.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here, and I look forward to getting to know all of you and working with the Everett School District.
Thank you. Now, board members.
It's good to see you. Hi, welcome.
Sarah, welcome aboard.
Yeah, no
kidding.
You're in the middle.
Picture.
I'll stand on my toes.
Board picture. Board picture.
One more.
Sorry, just walking in circles.
We have a special,
I can't get you from there.
Just back, you know, for fleeting moment, it's better to try to get the shoulders down. Whoops, that's not good.
Okay. Lastly, tonight, we have one final recognition. Although he's unable to be with us tonight, we'd like to acknowledge the work of former Director Ted Wenta. Ted will leave a legacy for his ability to ask difficult questions while always keeping an eye on district priorities and in particular finances. Equally important, Ted has been and will continue to be an advocate for education, and he's a community asset to us all. On a personal note, Ted is a good friend to have. It is not often as you grow old and you have an opportunity to make a new and lasting friendship. The more I learned about Ted, the more I realized this was typical of his ways. Many people call Ted a good and close friend, and I am personally thankful for the time that we have spent collaborating as directors. And at this time, although we don't have all directors present, if anyone else would like to say a comment, we decided to go through with this even though Ted couldn't be here because we wanted to honor and recognize his contributions.
I found it very difficult to say something because I will miss his wisdom and I will miss his joy of learning on the dais up here. Ted, I can count as a friend, and I will truly miss his approach to reason and his approach to coming to a conclusion of any item that we have to study about and work about and find a solution to. So I value his friendship and I value his
So I think probably I'll finish up then, unless the students have something they'd like to add.
I can't say much about his time on the board because I only saw a very small part, but I know he always greeted me with a smile, and it was really helpful to have a friendly face in the room.
Thank you. I was talking with Ted about 45 minutes before the board meeting tonight, just double checking, whether he might be able to make it. And he said, no, I'm going to stay here at home. My feet are up, and this is where I need to stay tonight. We talked a little while and reminisced on this occasion and a previous occasion about the time that he chose to write a letter to the editor, and it was published. And it happened to be a very complimentary letter about something that was going on, and he was very surprised to get a call immediately after it was published from the superintendent. That was me. Asking whether or not he'd like to become involved in a district committee. And he did immediately, actually, and then not too terribly long after that decided that he would run for the school board. He wanted you all to know how much he would like to be here this evening. He very, very much appreciates all the time, the energy that you all put into this governance and leadership work. He asked especially that I remark for anyone who was here upon the quality and character of all of the staff of the Everett Public Schools. And he especially wanted to thank the administrative team who sits here in the board meetings to support the board in its work, board meeting after board meeting after board meeting. He would like to have finished his term, but that is simply not in the cards for him. And we wanted to make sure that we recognized him formally this evening. We have a plaque that we're going to present him. We would have presented this evening. And we actually have a cake that we were going to celebrate with this evening. I told Ted that it's not a good enough excuse to stay at home. That cake is going to greet him at work tomorrow, and he'll have an opportunity to celebrate our recognition of his service with the folks he is spending some of his time during the day with at the YMCA where he works. So he especially then wanted me to thank you, John Yang, for stepping forward, and he wishes you the very, very best in your service to Everett Public Schools students, staff, and community. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a meeting with some pretty high emotional roller coaster here. Okay, we're going to move on to public comments, and I believe we have several folks who would like to speak to the board tonight. On behalf of the school board, I would like to welcome you to this afternoon's meeting. The board recognizes the value of public comment on educational topics and the importance of involving members of our community in its meetings. School board meetings are designed to conduct district business in the public. We welcome ideas and opinions presented in this same spirit. I would like to share how this portion of the meeting works. First of all, the superintendent will call you to the podium here in the order you signed up. Each speaker has 3 minutes. All comments are recorded, which will be made available for future viewing by both the school board and the public. public comment section is for the board to listen to what you have to say. It is not a time for debate or discussion. As board president, I have the responsibility to ensure the meeting and all conversations are orderly, productive, and respectful, and I appreciate your help with that responsibility. Dr. Cohen, who's our first speaker?
I will be delighted to call speakers. The first speaker this evening is Jill Jackson. Jill is a resident of the district, an employee of the district at Cascade High School. She wishes to address the board on paraeducator wages, and I would note that the green light that will come on will signify the start of your 3 minutes, the yellow, a 30-second warning, and the red, the expiration of your time. Welcome.
Okay. Thank you. Good evening. My name is Jill Jackson, EAP's first vice president and a paraeducator in the Achieve program. I have been employed with the district for 25 years. I want to begin by saying thank you for providing excellent opportunities for all of our paraeducators. Each of our members bring a special skill set to the table, and combined with Everett's professional development, we have some of the best paraeducators in the state. A couple of years ago, OSPI released data that for some student populations, 60% of their daily academic needs are being delivered by a paraeducator. We work and support some of the most difficult students in the Everett School District. They may have complex disabilities, high ACEs scores, experience homelessness, or suffer from mental illness. I would like to share with you some stories of the important work our paras have done since the beginning of the school year. On the first day of school, I supported a student with autism. He spent the first couple hours of the day in a room under the table, banging his head until his parents came to pick him up. This was all because the transition to high school was a little too scary for him. I stayed with him. This happened 3 more times since the first day of school. Just last week, he started to escalate again. I worked with him on strategies to calm down, and he was able to finish his days successfully. I then met with a group of paras that were to be trained on how to help with toileting of a 15-year-old male student. On the third day, at an elementary school, a 9-year-old student in crisis was in the hallway. He proceeded to tear things off the wall, throw chairs and tables. It was a para who stayed with him, kept him safe, and ensured the safety of other students. After this emotional ordeal, the para went back to the classroom without missing a beat and continued to support the other students. The first week of school, a teen with thoughts of suicide took some medication, came to school the next day, obviously under the influence of something. She found a paraeducator who she trusted and felt safe with and asked for help. That para got the student the help that she needed. Over the last few years, an average of 60 paras resign every year. This does not include anyone that is terminated or retired. Right now, there's 59 open positions that the district is not able to fill. By paying them an equitable wage, you can recruit and retain highly skilled paraeducators. You cannot achieve this by continuing to pay them with poverty-level wages. Paras are professional, dedicated, compassionate employees that make a difference for our students every day.
Thank you very much for your comments. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Speaker this evening is Anne LaRue. She is an employee of the district at Everett High School and wishes to address the board regarding paraeducator salary.
Good afternoon. I'm Anne LaRue. I am EAP's second vice president and on-time graduation success coordinator with Everett High School. I appreciate your time today. To quote one of our Everett High teachers, teachers may be the muscle, but the classified staff are the bones to the school. And as you've heard, many of our children spend over 60% of their day with a paraeducator. The work of a paraeducator has tremendously grown over the last 10 years, and I would like to share a bit about some of our members, our service coordinators, specialists, and assistants. These groups are recognized leaders, not just with Everett Public Schools, but statewide. and instrumental in establishing guidelines for positions such as on-time graduation success coordinators, career specialists, gear-up counselors, administrative and family support advocates. We directly impact this district's exceptional on-time graduation rates and access to post-secondary education and scholarships. We provide physical, social, economic, and emotional support. We are known as the Yes Women and Men, rearranging our schedules to stay late, come in early, coordinate weekend events, and extensive summer programs. Why? Because we do believe in this district's vision, and we want success for each student. When I asked one of my favorite administrators what in the world I could say to you today, she suggested that I give you something from the heart. My colleagues and I wanted an example that would be so impactful you would say, wow, I didn't know a paraeducator did that. But paraeducators have so many wows, we couldn't pick just one. Here are a few key reasons why we get to have so many of those wow moments. We are the people going door to door, looking for those students who have stopped coming to school. We are the ones with the open doors where the students come to for help with that final assignment to cross the graduation finish line. We scour transcripts for ways to recover credit, help students find resources or a part-time job to support families. We give technical trainings and provide administrative and counselors the time to tackle each crisis. We are the ones whose alphabet of last names do not change each year, and students seek us out year after year. We support our schools from behind the scenes, but also work alongside with top district and building administrators on a daily basis. This doesn't even begin to highlight all that the paraeducators do for this district. It is just a fraction of what the bones of the building do each day. And we know this wouldn't be possible without opportunities provided by you guys with Everett Public Schools. If nothing else, remember that the paraeducators are selfless employees, the majority who work extra without complaint, timesheets, and six-figure salaries. They fill in for more than the 55 open positions in this district. And these paraeducators earn poverty-level wages, and this is not okay. Your paraeducators play a key role in this Everett community, should be valued and respected. We deserve the Everett Public School to renegotiate our wages, and we would really like your support for that. Thank you for your time. Oops, I didn't see my
Thank you very much.
Our third speaker this evening is Dana Weir. She's a resident of the district, an employee, a parent of a student enrolled, and she works at Everett High School. She'd like to speak to the board about paraeducator salaries.
Embarking on my 8th year as one of the EAP board members, I'm a co-secretary and I work at Everett High. I wanted to share with you today about the heart of an Everett Public School paraeducator. You see, we're all about the student, the children in our community. From the north end of Everett to the south end, from Silver Lake to Mill Creek, we are the mothers, we are the grandparents, we are the neighbors, we are the community, we are the voters. We, for the most part, are the largest Everett Public School employee group that live and reside within our district boundaries. Each paraeducator not only represents our 500 plus members, but we represent a network, a neighborhood, a family, a network of voters. We as educators are here to raise up the next generation of our community. That's why we stay where we reside. That's what's important to us. We are each diversely educated professionals with various masters, bachelor's, associate's degrees, and experience in training. And although we are diverse, there's one common thread. We're here for our future community. We have a heart for the student. The work we do is challenging, and wages elsewhere would probably pay more. But we have decided to interact with our students daily and serve the Everett Public School child. We teach and train, we prepare and plan, we collaborate and coordinate, we stay late and cover unfilled positions. We are called upon to be on the tilt team, attendance and leadership teams. We are club advisors, we are athletic coaches. We have work that's instrumental to the growth of our students. Our doors are always open to our students. We are professional and we are proactive. We collect data and we make that number a name. As a community member, as a parent, as a neighbor, listening to my voting friends, our schools deserve quality employees. consistency and retention in the crucial roles that paraeducators fill. Understaffing and poverty level wages are not okay. With our current 59 open positions, as of yesterday, we are certain this is due to the wage discrepancy. On behalf of our members, we seek to be valued and compensated for the crucial role that we have. On behalf of our children, we seek the highest standards for positions that directly impact them in their daily interactions. On behalf of our voting community, we seek quality and accountability in our schools. Thank you, Dr. Cohn and the board, for creating the space for us to support our Everett Public School student and prepare them for our future in our community, to prepare them to be future neighbors and voters. And thank you for listening to me tonight.
Thank you very much.
Speaker this evening is Brianna Smith. She's an employee of the district at Everett High School. She'd like to address the board on paraeducator salaries.
Hello, my name is Brianna Smith. I am the EAP co-secretary. I have the privilege of speaking with you today about the work our members do with the incredibly diverse population of students we have at Everett Public Schools. From elementary through high school, English language learners comprise approximately 14% of our school populations. However, if we considered all those who have previously exited the program, our numbers would be closer to 60%. Sometimes these students are in families that came to America to realize the American dream, but often the families have found themselves here for other reasons, as refugees from war and famine. Our EL staff become a safe harbor in a tumultuous world for these students. EL paraeducators help students acquire language and therefore give our schools the gift of cultural diversity. EL paraeducators also do much of the paperwork and monitoring required for the EL program, freeing up certificated time to focus on their core strengths, such as teaching and curriculum planning. In 2017, Dr. Cohn was named Washington's Superintendent of the Year. In an interview with the Seattle Times, he was asked why Everett Public Schools has one of the highest graduation rates for EL students in the state. He replied, "A lot of it is making sure that institutional kinds of things, bureaucratic kinds of things, are helping kids and not creating barriers." The article goes on to say, the district also has an EL success coordinator who focuses on becoming familiar with the barriers students face and helps them navigate their new schools. And yes, this is correct. The EL teams don't let barriers get in the way. I'd like to give you a glimpse of what that looks like for our EL staff using Everett High School as an example. Last year, there were almost 40 seniors on the caseload. Of those 40, approximately 10 had parents living with them. That left 30 high school seniors trying to make it on their own to graduation. And I bet I don't have to tell you how much a present and involved parent means to this process. But 30 of our students don't have them. So we step up. We make wake-up calls and help get immunizations. We help with FAFSAs and college applications, loans and grants. In June, we meet students at 10 p.m. after their shift at a local Starbucks to help them finish a class required for graduation. There are 2 on suicide watch, and we check in with them every day. There is a team of paraeducators working tirelessly in the classrooms and support services at Everett High School. This work is being duplicated in each school with each student throughout our district. It takes a large group of support staff to navigate the nearly 100 languages spoken by our students. Laura Rogers, our EAP president, is also an EL paraeducator. She works in elementary school and supports students in their journey out of EL during their most formative language years. She can't be with us tonight as she is in the State Paraeducator Board. Laura would like me to convey the incredible importance of our profession. Our schools could not function without us. Our members provide 60% of contact in each student's academic day. Each of us is important. Each of us deserves to be paid a living wage for the work we do. Please allow us to open our contract as provided for in Section 14.1. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, thank you to all our speakers who came and to all of you who showed up tonight to support each other. Appreciate it. With that, we are going to move on to the consent agenda, Section 8.0. Dr. Cohen, will you please give an overview of the consent agenda this evening?
Yes, the board's consent agenda includes repetitive business items. Examples of this type of item include meeting minutes, personnel actions, expense vouchers, surplus lists, gifts and grants, and recurring contracts. Sometimes the consent agenda will include items that occur less frequently but are of a routine business nature. The less frequently occurring consent agenda items are usually reviewed by the board in its Friday report 1 or more weeks before the board meeting, when those items are scheduled to appear on the consent agenda. This gives directors time to ask staff questions about those items or to consider a discussion about the policy implications of those items. If a consent agenda item is removed by the concurrence of 2 directors, that item is placed in new business and the remaining items are automatically renumbered. The board votes on the consent agenda by a single motion. By its definition, a consent agenda is not debatable. In the case of this consent agenda, the superintendent's office has received no questions or comments regarding any of the items. Therefore, the consent agenda is presented as published and we ask your approval thereof.
Thank you. Do any directors wish to remove an item from the consent agenda and place it in the new business section of the agenda? Hearing none, we will move. Wait. Hearing no requests, I would like to call for a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to adopt the consent agenda. We will now move to the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The motion carries. Which takes us to section 5.0. This is a time for board comments where directors have an opportunity to share information or comments as they relate to district business. And I think I will begin with Director Lassane this evening.
I have no comments, thank you.
Okay. And
none for me this time.
Okay. Do either of our student representatives have anything they'd like to share regarding the first start of school or anything that's happening this week?
We got our one-to-one devices at Cascade High School, and they're really helping us in all of our classes. For example, last week in AP Chemistry, we used our laptops in a program called Logger Pro to track and graph it, so we didn't have to do it by hand, and it was really helpful. So thank you for the laptops.
That's what we like to hear.
I would have to add on to that by saying that using our devices, I built my resume today for the first time and a cover letter, which you would have to do on a computer anyways, but it's so nice to be able to have your own right in front of you where you can show it to your teacher and have feedback right there without having to have a giant screen in front of you keeping you from learning. And also today, or this board meeting is the first one I've been able to make this year, and I'm really glad to be here and just see everything that's happened today because it's been a very powerful meeting today. So thank you.
Okay. Glad to have you here. I have no comments, so with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Cohn for the superintendent's report.
All righty. I'm getting the index finger. There we go. All right, very good. Thank you very much. So this is the cover slide. It's a wonderful picture of Cascade High School students. Fall sports, of course, are in full swing. We want to congratulate our cross-country team from Cascade on their success this past weekend at the Mount Baker Invitational. The JV boys earned a first place overall finish and the JV girls earned a first place overall finish. We wanted to note that for you and let everyone know how proud we are of the students and their success. Tonight we've got a little bit of good news, additional good news. We've got a little bit of district news by way of updates. One gift recognition and a little bit of construction information. You just heard a little bit about one-to-one program rollout this year. This is our second year, and I think from every report that I've heard that it was amazingly smooth and particularly speedy again this year. We want to thank and recognize our learning information technology team and the staffs at the schools that have been doing that work, and frankly everybody else who helped out with this. I was at Cascades this year for a while. Literally moments after I walked in, somebody grabbed me and pulled me over to a vantage point and said, watch this. The last class that was here, when we checked out the equipment, the new equipment to the high school students, the deployment team moved the entire class through the process in 8 minutes from start to finish. That was pretty impressive. It's very much a well-oiled machine. It's fantastic to watch. The high school deployments were succeeded or are succeeded by support from the Digital Learning Ambassador Program. You've met some of these students during some of our workshop activities. The students are invited to join DLA and to learn new ways to effectively use their devices as a technology tool enhancing their learning. They share ideas, tips, tricks with peers and teachers, and the program started at Everett High School and is now expanding to Cascade and Jackson. We're very proud of these young people and the work that they're doing in our schools. I want you to know we hired a new orchestra teacher for Evergreen and North Middle Schools, and a new section of orchestra is being offered at Everett High School. It's all part of our overall orchestra program redevelopment in our North region, which is following the successful redevelopment in the South region. The orchestra program, of course, includes strings at the elementary level. This is a picture of a flyer that promotes the program at 4 of the 8 North Region schools. Expansion is planned to all of the North Region schools. We'd like to thank the Everett Public Schools Foundation for all of the work that they do on behalf of our students. The foundation delivered 1,875 backpacks for students in the district this year. We want to thank Durham School Services, Fred Meyer, Inspires Credit Union, Molina Healthcare, Northwest Plus CU, and Credit Union, I should say, and Costco for their significant support of the foundation. We'd like to draw your attention to new virtual welding training equipment that was installed, is actually being employed at Cascade High School. Went into service this fall as part of the Advanced Manufacturing Program implementation. One of the devices is stationary. It stays at Cascade High School. One is portable. It'll be used at Cascade and the other district middle and high schools. The initial enrollment for this course at Cascade High School is 50 students, and I think that's worth a celebratory note. Wanted you to know that last week 140 new teachers gathered to learn about the evaluation system that we use to support teaching and teachers in Everett Public Schools. All the principals attended training with teachers. The first of the 4 trainings are scheduled through February, and we work very hard to make sure that we have the very best alignment we can develop with our principals and our teachers in this work. New administrators are also attending Danielson and AWSP training. Wanted you to see some pictures. These are displays of some of the district's most liked posts in social media over the past couple of weeks. The first day with devices at Cascade High School is part of this, and we want to make sure that you're aware of the work that's going on there. Of course, John Yang and his appointment to position 1 was popular in the district's social media. Jackson High School's band director, Leslie Moffitt, has been bringing together band and percussion students along with their families for a meet and greet and eat for a number of years. As part of that event, they roll a 100-foot burrito all at one time to help kick off the new school year. We thought you would enjoy some photos of that. We want to thank the Washington Alliance for Better Schools. Through our membership with the Alliance, our career and technical education department received an inquiry and eventually the donation of a 3D printer from Microsoft Corporation valued at $7,000. It will be used in middle school computer-aided design courses. A couple of quick updates on construction activities. You received a fairly extensive update last time. Everett High School's Lincoln Field has been completed by the contractor. This included new synthetic turf, new backstop netting, and the field currently accommodates soccer, softball, physical education classes, and a 1/5 mile running circuit. New elementary school, our elementary number 18, is proceeding well. The underground stormwater detention system is nearing completion under what will be the main parking lot. The contractor continues to install footings, pour concrete slabs, and construct the steel frame of the building. That's a quick update on construction gifts and a variety of other good news in the district. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Lots going on and lots of good news as usual. Okay, we are moving to section 11.0, which is our strategic progress monitoring. And tonight we have our annual report from Catherine Matthews regarding student achievement. I think you have a lot of charts and graphs to share with us tonight.
I do. All right. Good evening. So tonight I'll be walking you through the elements of the 2018 State Assessment Program. We'll be talking about the assessment results, talk a little bit about trends and our gap data, and talk about what it's going to take or what it does take to close those gaps, and then share our equity targets. So you see our performance outcomes, you've seen those, and this is just an overview of the order as I just mentioned. Before I begin, I know I do have a lot of charts and graphs, so I'm just going to give you the summary at the beginning and at the end. So first of all, Everett Public Schools, as is our tradition, outperformed the state in every grade level and on every test this year. And the trends in our data follow the pattern that we see at the state level. While we're seeing little change really in the socioeconomic gap, I think this really points to the continued correlation between a school's socioeconomic status and their performance, and our need to focus really on that. African American and Black students, Hispanic and Latino, and Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander students continue to lag other groups. I did not mention our American Indian. That's a group that's often suppressed because of their small population size. Math is lagging ELA, and closing our gaps really is going to require a focus on accelerated learning, which we obviously are already focused on through such programs such as summer reading, summer school, our extended learning program, intervention programs like iReady and Imagine Learning English and Language Live. Our equity targets are helping schools to focus on individual student needs and making a difference in that area. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the impact of grade level and test changes on our scores, in particular the science test, which was released late last year. All right, so our assessment program. In the category of no change is 3rd through 8th grade Smarter Balanced assessments in ELA and math. At 5th and 8th grade, we did see a change in the science test from the MSP to the Washington Comprehensive Assessment of Science. In addition, at the high school level, we saw changes not only in the exams, but in the grades in which we test. So a movement to testing back into grade 10 for ELA and math, and then a movement of the WACAS to grade 11. And I want to talk a little bit more in depth about that, not just in the last year, but in the changes that have happened really since 2015, which was the inception of Smarter Balanced. So going back to 2015, the change in our assessment for accountability to Smarter Balanced for math and ELA happened. And as you recall, in that year, they moved the test for accountability to 11th grade while maintaining the graduation test in grade 10. And that existed for the classes of 2016, 17, and 18. So in a sense, students had a different exam for their graduation than they did for accountability. Now, in 2018, sort of at the last minute, rather than write a new ELA exam, the state decided to adopt Smarter Balanced for ELA and allow students to bank those scores into 11th grade. So we saw a change in our ELA scores almost immediately because it was the same test. They had an opportunity to take it in 10th and 11th grade. Math, however, was not the case. And for those classes, they continued to take the end of course exam in math in 10th grade, and then for accountability in 11th grade, the Smarter Balanced assessment in math. So we had low turnout, certainly not as low as most school districts. Our performance was much higher than many districts, but that did impact our scores. The plan in 2018 was to move the state assessment for accountability and graduation to be the same test for ELA, same test for math, and have that happen in the 11th grade. But just before last year, legislation was passed, House Bill 2224, moving the graduation exam back to 10th grade. So in effect, the class of 2019 has never been reported on. When they were 10th graders, they moved the test to 11th grade. When they were in 11th grade, they moved the test back to 10th grade. So we reported essentially on 2020, and then we skipped ahead, or 2018, and we skipped ahead to the class of 2020. In addition, last year, with the move of the math exam to 10th grade, there were some last-minute changes to remove the Algebra 2 elements from that test. And so in the fall of last year, for the retakes, it was the old exam, the old SBA math. And then in the spring, it shifted to the new exam. And in fact, remember, that spring was where most of the class of 2019 tested in math because they were supposed to test in 11th grade. So we actually tested 2 grade levels last year. 10th grade for graduation and accountability, and 11th grade for graduation and accountability. Or 11th grade for graduation, but not accountability, excuse me. Finally, just a note about the class of 2019. So those students took the end of course exam in biology, and after having taken that exam, they dropped the science requirement for that graduating class. And then as juniors, they were told they had to come back and take this new exam, the WCAS, for accountability. And I can just say, as also the parent of a class of 2019, that was a hard sell, getting students there. So I know our schools did a really good job in that area, but it's difficult to get kids to show up for an exam when they don't see obviously the purpose of it. All right, so let's talk about assessment results. So as I said before, we outperformed the state in every test, in every grade level. And that outperformance hit the double digits in more than half of the areas. So you can see, for example, in grade 8 ELA, we're up 13.6% above the state, 4th grade ELA, 13.4%, and so on. When we look at progress toward graduation, I always present this data to you each year. We have to look at it through a little different lens, okay? And that is because the class of 2019, the current seniors again, so their ELA exam, they had a chance to take it in 10th grade and 11th grade, bank their scores, so we're at 90.9%. For math, we're at 72.1, but remember, we moved their math test to 11th grade. So the only students who took it early in 10th grade were the students who were in math or Algebra 2 or above. So that's a that's a smaller subset, maybe 40% of the population. Those students did really well, but the vast majority of the students expected to take that test in 11th grade for the first time. So right now we're at 72.1. Many of those students are accessing not just alternatives, but they're accessing makeups, and I have every expectation that we're going to be on the same trajectory toward graduation that we have in the past. The class of 2020, so our current juniors, so they took their exams for the first time as 10th graders last year, and they were all required to take it. And again, the exam changed just prior to them taking the exam. So, while you might think, well, we took out some harder concepts, you have to remember that students taking a test closer to when they're taught the content will do better. And so there's some challenges around giving that test in that way. They, by the way, still have 2 years of opportunities to pass their tests and their alternatives. So again, we're on a good trajectory for them. When we look at the SBA and the WCAS trends, and I'm just going to look at grades 5, 8, and 10 in the extended version. There's slides for each grade level. So looking at grade 5, you see that we're fairly flat, within 2% from 2015 to 2018. For math, we saw an upward trend, and then science, with the change from MSP to WACAS, we saw a decrease. And just in comparison to the changes from the MSP in English to science, these are very similar changes to when we see a change in an exam. And the trend in 5th grade really is very similar to the other elementary grades. We saw generally an upward trend, with the exception of the flat in 5th grade in ELA and the drop in science. For 8th grade, you can see again we're flat here in ELA, and it's really flat when you're within a percent or so. So though it's declined a bit, it's still considered flat. And then a drop in science, and that also follows the general trend in middle school with flat scores, with the exception of 6th grade math that is up and 8th grade science here that is down. And now we see high school, which is a little bit more complicated. So you can see that, if you're just going from 2015 to 2018, there's a slight increase, but really from last year to this year, a slight decrease. Remembering that in the first 3 years, we're looking at grade 11 accountability, so that includes previously passed. They had a chance to take it in 10th grade, and they had to for graduation, and those scores were banked and taken a second time. The 10th grade scores this year are the first run scores. So though there is a slight decline, a 5% decline is very small for the circumstances. These are not kids who got a chance to take it twice before reporting. In math, we see an increase from 2015 to 2018, and it's basically slightly flat from last year, but remembering again, this was the first 3 years, grade 11 math at SBA, and those were students who did not have to have that exam to graduate. They had the end of course exam. This year, the exam moves back to 10th grade, and we maintain, our progress from the year before, but it's a first run exam and a new one. And then you see a large drop in the science, and as I said before, this is the class that they had to take the end of course in biology to graduate, and then they had to take another exam for accountability. So that's largely from the perspective of students not showing up for the exam. All right, looking at the achievement gap, and again, we'll look at 5th, 8th, and 10th, or high school. So the green line represents the all students, and so we can see some gaps here. I marked the African American and Black population in green because they are increasing and the gap is narrowing to a degree. Hispanic students going up, but also there is a gap. Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islanders, that gap's a little bit, that is troubling, the large gap there. This is a very small group. Low-income students continue to have a gap, however, it is small in comparison to students with disabilities and transitional bilingual students. And we see a similar pattern in 8th grade, with the exception of African-American students dropping a little last year from 56 to 49.2, 56.5. Hispanic students with less of a gap, but dropping about 4%. And then you see Native Hawaiian students with a spike there. And again, this is a small population, which means 1 or 2 students can make a large difference in the percentage of students passing. Again, you see a smaller gap for low income than with students with disabilities or transitional bilingual. And then we have high school, very much the same pattern. So these are the groups that we are watching. And in ELA, we saw with these groups closing in the gap in 11 of our grade levels and subgroups in ELA, and flat in 13. So more than half were either flat or decreasing of gap. And then in math, again, here we have the all for math for 5th grade. In a similar situation, although you'll notice that the gap is slightly larger for low-income and African-American students. And this math, as I said earlier, math is lagged. And we see that in the gaps as well. And you can also see the fluctuation, though Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islanders have increased, there's still that fluctuation due to small population size. For 8th grade math, a similar pattern, although African American and or Black students increasing in their percentage meeting standard. Hispanic students with slightly less gap, and Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders dropping slightly, about 9% actually. And then again, the gap with students with disabilities and transitional bilingual students exceeding that of low-income students. And then here we see math at the high school. And again, for the 2017-18 year, this is now our 10th grade. So we have skipped a year here. In 16-17, that is reporting the class of 2018, and in 2017-18, it's reporting the class of 2020. So we see a similar situation with these groups that we have concerns about, although the gap is considerably larger here than with ELA. All right, so the level charts that we look at each year show on the left side the schools and then the percent of free and reduced lunch students in the schools. Blue represents the percentage of students who are in level 4, and then green in level 3, yellow level 2, and red level 1. And this, by the way, is tested, so the numbers are not going to match the accountability because we can't know the claim levels of students who did not test. So as you can see, as the percentage of students who are on free and reduced lunch in a school increase, we see a decreasing number of students meeting standard, and particularly in level 4. There's a couple of exceptions, Whittier and Garfield here at grade 5. And then you'll just notice that Everett Public Schools, again, continue to outperform the state, particularly in level 4. For math, a similar pattern with less outlier and a greater percentage of students meeting standard in level 4 in Everett Public Schools than at the Washington State level. And then at the middle school level, a similar pattern with the exception of a slight dip there in Eisenhower, so not a perfect line there. Again, Everett Public Schools, greater number of percentage of students in level 4. And then in math, a similar pattern of decreasing proficiency with increasing free and reduced lunch rate. Here we see Everett, here we see the high school. And you notice that Everett and Cascade are at the same level, and they're very similar in their performance, so we don't see quite the straight line there. And the same is true here in math. And then Sequoia struggling a little bit more in math than the other schools, and for several obvious reasons. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about closing the gap. So what you have here are the scores that are needed to meet standard at each grade level on the ELA Smarter Balance test. And if we look at the number of points or scale score points in between each of those levels, it's a very modest amount. So 41 points between grade 3 and 4, 29 between 4 and 5, and so on. And some people would argue that that's a year of growth. The challenge with that is that if you have a student who's in level 1 at a very low number, such as 2319 in 3rd grade, achieving just that 41 scale score points is not going to get the student to standard the next year. In fact, this student, this hypothetical student, if they earned each of those scale score points over time, they would be in 7th grade before they hit standard for the 3rd grade mark, and they would be in 8th grade before they were even halfway to 4th grade. So that's not going to get students to standard. When we have students that are 1 or 2 levels behind, we have to think about it in terms of what sufficient growth would be to make that happen. And so if we take that same student and we think, well, if they're in level 1 now, then we need them to jump 2 levels, and we would think of that in terms of a 2-year jump. We're really talking about more like 92 points each year for 2 years to make that jump to be at standard. And when we look at our data, we have many students who are making that kind of a jump over time. We have many that are remaining in the same level that they were in the prior year. However, they are making improvements in their scale scores. So for example, in this chart, you see along the x-axis is the distance a student was from proficiency in 2017, and along the y-axis, the distance that student was from proficiency in 2018, the next year. And what we want is them obviously to be moving toward that 0 line. So the students in red are students who are in level 1 in 17, and they are still in level 1 as of last year. Yellow, level 2 to level 2, and then light green, 3 to 3, and dark green, level 4 to level 4. So these students above the line then are students who got closer to proficiency between those 2 years. Okay, so it's roughly half of our students that are making that move. The students below the line did not get closer to proficiency. Some may have even moved farther away. But what we want to point out here is that some of these students are making very big scale score gains, and that's what is needed to close that gap. So for example, this student, 225 points away in 2017, only 70 away in 2018, and that sort of gain is going to get that student to proficiency, which is where we need them to be. And in fact, if we look at students who made just one scale score gain, so from level 1 to 2, 2 to 3, or 3 to 4, I mean, you can see that those students are clustered very close to that 0 line and above. And so that is really evidence that we're making improvement. And while we do lag in math, the fact is that students are continuing to make those kind of scale score gains that we could get them to be closing the gap, meeting proficiency within 2 years. So you see math and that. So let's talk about actual students, though, and what we're seeing. So in this chart, what you're seeing across the bottom are students who are level 1 in 2017. And above them, or next to them, are the students who are level 2 in 2017. And here we have where they were in 2018. So some students remained in level 1, some moved up to level 2. We had a few go to level 3, and then 1 or 2 at level 4. The orange line represents the number of students in each of those groups. So the vast number of them made scale score gains, but remained in level 1, and they need to make more gains in order to make that jump. So you see the students who went from level 1 to level 2 in just 1 year, the average number of scale score points that they gained was 95 points. That's the kind of gain that we need to be watching for. And in fact, the few that made the jump all the way to level 3 in 1 year, on average had 133.8 points. So that's a big jump. And that pattern repeats itself whether you're looking at ELA in grade 5. You see the same data, or in 8th grade, slightly less. The jump from 1 to 2 was on average 76 points, and 1 to 3, 124 points. Going from 2 to 3, 71 points. So really, whether you're going from 1 to 2 or 2 to 3, it's roughly, we're seeing the same pattern with our students. So this is really where all of those programs, extended learning, summer school, ILE, iReady, Language Live, all of the things that are filling in the gaps and giving students more learning opportunities so that their growth is greater than what we would consider that 1 year from the bottom of level 3 to the bottom of level 3 in the next year. All right, so how are schools watching this then? Really, it's through our equity targets, and just as a brief reminder, so the equity targets were based off of the 15-16 baseline year. Essentially, we took the 15-16 baseline and students, or the all, was required to make a 20% gain as their target for 2021. So over the course of 5 years, 2021, a gain of 20%. And that target for all was then applied to all of the subgroups. So for example, we have here TBL having to get to that same level, low income male and female. When the baseline year exceeded the all, then 20% was added to that. So there were no groups earning, having to make a target less than that all. And if the group was 80% or above, then the target is 100%. So you can see our Asian students in this case had a target of 100%. The line above it shows the target. The bars indicate the actual percentage of students meeting standard. So for example, our Asian students here are meeting their target. Their target is 100%. We are, as with the gaps, we're seeing students who are in the transitional bilingual program and the special ed program, actually they're suppressed because they're too small. The low-income students lagging that target. So those targets are set for every grade level and test and at every school, and our schools, they get a chart of that information, and so they're able to look at their current enrollment and really try to identify those individual students and what programs will help them to close that gap, so gaining those additional skill score points over a short period of time. So here we have math, and you can see it's a steep target for some of the groups that are a bit farther behind than the all. So students with disabilities, TBL, our Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander group, and you can see here Asian students, the all nearly meeting the target there, as well as our male students and our non-low income students. Here's 8th grade, and we're just off the target in some areas, such as the not TBL and not special ed, a little farther off the target for those groups, the transitional bilingual, low income, and then some of our ethnic groups as well. And here's math for 8th grade. So you can see in some cases, such as the African American, Black, Hispanic students, the bars showing their actual performances increasing, so they're making gains, and but not quite reaching their target. And then we have high school, and similar story, although it's because of the changes to the test, it's a little bit more frustrating because you're really providing accountability for different groups, and as I said, you're skipping an entire graduating class in this data. And then here we have high school math. Again, lagging due to the change in test and accountability. All right, so once again, we outperform the state in every grade level on every test. Our trends follow the state patterns. We're showing a little change in the SES gap and continuing to show a correlation between overall school performance and SES. Some of our ethnic groups are lagging behind others, but are showing some gains over time, seeing a lag in ELA. Closing the gaps is really going to take that extra effort. It's going to have to be more than what students get in a normal school day, more than a year's growth. Our equity targets are helping schools to focus on individual students to close those gaps. And then I really think the grade level and exam changes at the high school level have been a challenge for that data. And hopefully we'll have some stability in the future where we can get some scores that will really help to reflect actual achievement. With 1 minute and 40 seconds to go.
Thank you very much. Once again, you do a good job of capturing the data and putting it in a way that is helpful to understand, and where there's still work to be done. I have a feeling that maybe our new director has a few more questions than some of us after. But your time will come when you get to ask lots and lots of questions. But tonight, we do have an opportunity after presentations for directors and student representatives to ask questions or make comments. So With that, I'm going to start to my left with Director Andrews. If you have any questions or comments for...
I need a little memory refresh for the class of 2019. For example, the 72.1% who have met standard. What are the options? So the exam will be given again in the spring of 2019, and they can pass then. And then what are the options?
So there are retakes going on starting in about 2 weeks.
Oh, okay.
So there's a fall retake for the Smarter Balanced Assessment, and then there is the spring administration of the test. They also can meet standard through the SAT, through AP scores, through the ACT. There is the locally determined course and assessment, which is being put in place in ELA and math right now as well for students who have struggled to pass in other ways. So there are many alternatives, and as you heard tonight, the success coordinators at the high school are, sort of the dogged folks that track down every opportunity and really connect with kids to make sure that they have every opportunity to pass.
Thank you. I had a question too, and this might have been part of your explanation of all the changes in the high school testing, but on slide 16, the jump in math scores, I think this was looking at math.
The jump in math scores.
Well, the middle, yeah, math, sorry.
For high school?
Yeah. So especially last year, it jumped for the state from 25.9 to 40.6. However, we didn't trend with that sort of increase, same increase the state had. That jump to the 40.6 by the state is part of that, the timing of the tests and all that you were explaining earlier?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, math has been a challenge. I think, if you look at the data for ELA compared to math, you have to remember in 2015, they adopted the ELA SBA as the graduation exam with a lower cut score and the ability to bank those scores for accountability in 11th grade. Not so for math.
Right.
For math, students, it took the EOC in 10th grade and then were required to come back to take the SBA in 11th grade. And if you think about it, in those beginning years, the students who were coming back after AP exams, and they probably passed their end of course exam already, so getting them to come back is a challenge. So who's coming back? Kids who need more opportunities to graduate. So that group was probably a little bit more weighted towards students who are struggling in math.
Okay. It makes my head spin. I can't imagine being an instructor or staff person and try to keep all this straight as well. Yes, okay, thank you.
Director Lassane,
the changing rules.
Well, thank you very much for the data. It's, it's, as Director Andrews mentioned, it makes your head spin sometimes hearing all the numbers. And I'm glad that we are outperforming the state. That's a good thing. The concern that I do have is that we have steep targets, our equity targets for certain groups, and yet we can see that they are making gains, but not enough gains to reach the targets that we have set for them. And I know we want to make the targets steep because we want to make sure that they can reach them. But what are we doing to ensure that that growth that they're doing continues and that they can meet the target? I mean, if you set the target so high that we're not seeing them meet them, they are growing towards it, but they're not meeting them. Why are we doing that? At what point do we require that students attend summer school, that attend the extended learning opportunities for them to ensure that they meet those targets and continue that upward growth? At what point do we do that?
Well, I don't know if I'm the person to answer that. That might be more a Dr. Stewart question. But I will support you in answering.
You're going to support me in answering. We'll stand right here then. So first of all, we created targets. So for a while, we didn't have targets when we were making the transition after No Child Left Behind. And we felt like schools need a target. We all do better with goals and targets. So we have the targets. I think if you take a look at the last 4 years, we've expanded our summer schools, especially at our elementary. So when Dr. Matthews talks about accelerated learning, you've seen some of the programs we put into place. Larry will be giving a presentation here in a couple weeks about summer learning. The growth that we've had in our elementary schools has been tremendous, and the work that we're doing in the springtime, as soon as we get the initial SBA scores and calling parents and having their kids come and filling up those programs has been tremendous. So that's one program. The summer reading that you saw happen about 3 years, there's another example of a program. The growth in our high schools with their both the in-school support that they're getting during the day and then also the summer school. I would say those are probably the biggest growth areas that we've made. We do need to do a better job with thinking about some stronger after-school programs for our students. So those are the ones I can highlight that you mentioned that I think we're really proud of and that we got on 2 or 3 years ago.
And I think during the day and extended time during the school year, the ILE, iReady, Language Live, that are really the work of the team on MTSS, all of those things.
Wow. And going back, I'm so grateful that Director Andrews asked the question about the class of 19. I had that down here, but I won't belabor that one. But my concern too is also we stretch so much in on-time graduation. We have programs to ensure our kids can get to the graduation finish line, so to speak. But we're still deficient, I guess you would say, lagging is the proper word, in the math content for our graduates. How do we improve that? What's the next step to ensure that math is not lagging as far as high school opportunities for our kids? Our kids are going to be going into the, society being deficient in math in some cases. Not all of our kids, but in some cases. What's the next step? What would be the next step?
So I would want to maybe separate that out, and certainly Dr. Scott or Dr. Riley Black are welcome to join me in talking about math. But I do want to make the point that there is a question about the validity of the scores. And that is because, remember, those first 3 tested years, those students did not need that test to graduate. Yeah. They were coming back for a test after having passed their graduation exam. And that decision by the legislature really created a challenge, because we all know, at the high school level, as soon as the exam for accountability became a graduation exam, those scores statewide went up. I'm talking about 15 years ago now, but divorcing those two things really resulted in a lower participation of prepared students. So I wouldn't want to judge our high school math performance on those test scores, because I feel like they're not commensurate with ELA because of how that test is structured. Now, that being said, certainly 3 through 10, the scores in math have been lower than the scores in ELA. We have to remember that we teach twice as many minutes of ELA as math in grades K through 8. So, there's the question of time on task and opportunity to learn. So I think there's a lot at play here that really has to be sort of teased out. Do you have anything else, Ted? So that's the challenge of looking at the high school scores.
Got no questions, but thank you for the detailed report. Yeah, it seems very thorough.
Hunter, do you have any questions or comments? Okay. I think my only question is, this was our third year of administering SBA? Fourth, okay. Huh, time flies. And, we compare ourselves to the state. The state has a higher overall poverty rate, so you would sort of assume that we would hopefully be better in most cases. What are your go-to charts and graphs? Because I was looking at them all, and I'm trying to sort of discern, how do we know as a system that we're getting better over time? Because I saw a lot of flat lines, and we're comparing ourselves to the state where we're doing the pluses, but we're not really comparing ourselves year over year over year. And I know that the challenges of changes in exams and administering an exam for the first time and maybe even the second year, you don't get the same results until teachers and educators better understand the exam and that kind of thing, or more alignment, I guess. How do you look at sort of that big picture?
Right. So I would love to say that there is, one KPI that I look at and say, we're doing great, but it's a complex system. And I started writing this report this year. I cut a lot of slides out. I know that's hard to believe because it's still super long.
We get the backup version. I saw it.
But I try to look at the totality of the evidence. So just looking at grade level trends and whether or not we're flat is one thing, but looking at those gaps, looking at how we're closing them or not closing them, or in what areas are we closing or not closing them. I feel like I have to look at this entire data set. It is a lot to look at for sure.
Just spend time.
Yeah. I will tell you, as an educator in this district, as a leader in this district, and a parent of a child in this district, I think we do an exceptional job. Are there areas we need to work in? Absolutely. And taking this open, honest look at the data every year is a critical part of that, right? Because we're identifying the areas we need to focus on, develop programs, meet kids' needs. And this is just 140-minute of it, but this happens across the district in buildings. And looking at that totality of the data is really the only way that you can do it. I just don't believe that there's one chart you can go to and say, we get an A.
Yeah, I guess I struggle to understand the gap analysis because that gap is persistent and stubborn. And I don't really, when I look at all the slides, get in my mind an understanding of, you could say, oh, in fifth grade, we're closing the gap here. And in eighth grade, it's kind of grown, and it's just so all over the board. I sometimes struggle with understanding if we're actually making headway or not, or whether just kind of one goes up, one goes down, one goes up.
Yeah.
And so if there's anything that you can think of that sort of helps clarify that, I would love to have that conversation with you, or better understand sort of how to approach the data set to look for that.
You bet.
Okay, thank you very much for the information, the presentation. And with that, we're going to take a 15-minute break and come back at 6:25. Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started again here. Next up on the agenda is section 12.0, which is information and discussion, and tonight we have no information or discussion topic, which takes us to section 13.0, unfinished business, and tonight Mike Gunn is going to walk us through Resolution 1187, the formation, instructions, and guiding principles for a capital bond planning committee. Mr. Gunn.
Thank you very much. So tonight's presentation, as you mentioned, is about Resolution 1187 relating to a formation, instructions, and guiding principles for a committee to provide a recommendation on a capital bond. This resolution is very similar to one that you recently passed having to do with High School Growth Mitigation Committee. It is also, this presentation tonight also follows on two recent discussions that you've had on the same topic. One at your August workshop, and then also on September 11th, you also talked about this same topic. So I should do a fairly quick review of this tonight and present the resolution to you for approval. So the resolution, again, pertains to the formation of a committee. This committee, if it is formed as you will be asked to approve, the committee work will be underway from October through June of 2019. You have asked for it to be brought back to you by the superintendent in time for your August workshop next summer. So you will be seeing it again at that time. And then, assuming that you find it acceptable, you would be voting on that probably in September or October of 2019. That gives you about 6 months from that point in time, assuming that you approved it like in October, it's about 6 months to the election date of April 28th, 2020. So that's kind of the timeline for it. The committee membership would be approximately 30 community members, community and staff members rather, plus 3 students who would also be members. About 24 community members representing a broad cross-section of our community, 2 principals or assistant principals representing the north, central, and southern regions of the district, so a total of 6 district staff, and then a student from each of the 3 comprehensive high schools. The selection process would be very similar to what we had you approve in the resolution for the High School Growth Mitigation Committee. However, there is one modification to this, and that is that each board member would have the ability to nominate up to 3 applicants for this committee for the superintendent's consideration, and the superintendent will select at least 1 applicant submitted by each board member. So basically, each board member has the ability to recommend 3, and of those 3, the superintendent would be obligated to select at least 1 from each board member.
So just a very quick footnote here. This arose out of our working through this agenda setting process and suggestions from directors around being able to suggest people, yet still keep it a superintendent advisory committee. Okay.
Thank you. The selection committee we're proposing is identical to the one that just did some work on the High School Growth Mitigation Committee. Staff support is virtually the same. I think there were just a few minor changes, but it's basically the same team that you've seen and heard from many times over the years. The instructions to the committee are very brief, giving this committee some fairly broad range of ability to recommend, to come to you with a recommendation. So basically you said to the committee that you want them to complete their work and have a recommendation by June 15, describing the size and scope of a capital bond proposal, and that the board anticipates the bond proposal will be placed on the April 2020 special election ballot. So that does narrow down the parameters a bit. There are follow-on guiding principles, 2 slides, there are about 7 of them. So listen closely, because this will be the guiding principles given to the committee. They're not directions or instructions, they're not mandates, but they're guiding principles. So the committee will be asked to consider in some manner the key themes raised by the community over the recent last 3 or 4 months, along with input and feedback on the work of the committee itself. So the committee is asked to solicit that and to consider it. The committee will also be asked to consider the need for new classrooms and property to house current and future students, especially at the high school and elementary school levels in the South End, where most of the district's growth is occurring. Also, the committee will be asked to consider the need to modernize schools because they're getting old, as well as the need to replace or upgrade systems, heating, ventilation, air conditioning, roofing, flooring, plumbing, and so on. Also, consider the need to upgrade existing buildings to accommodate newer enhanced educational programs. Certainly the one that we've talked a lot about in the last couple of years has been STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. Also, the need to continue improvements for safety and security in our district facilities. We mentioned in particular Cascade High School and Everett High. Those will be somewhat tougher to put some security measures in place, but we are working on developing a plan for that. So we'll ask the committee to consider that. Technology, the need to provide new enhanced and replacement technology, infrastructure, and equipment for instruction and support operations. And then finally, property taxes, to consider the variables affecting future tax rates, the difficulties in predicting them, and the sensitivity our community has to approving an increase in tax rates. So in those 7 guiding principles, we've tried to summarize a broad body of knowledge that we will be asking the committee to learn about and then to consider in their recommendation. Next steps, assuming that you approve the resolution tonight, the committee will be formed in October. Their work will continue through June of 19. The recommendation is then due from the committee to the superintendent by June 15. The superintendent will review it and provide at your August workshop his recommendation as to for you to either approve it or to modify it and then approve it or to reject it. So the superintendent would be coming to you in your August workshop with his recommendation, and then you would be asked to take action probably in September or October on that resolution. And that would then set us up for a special election April 2020. With that, I would like to ask that you consider approving Resolution 1187.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Prior to approving the resolution, do directors have questions? Go ahead.
Thank you very much for the work that you've put together, and thank you for bringing such detailed outline of what you thought we were saying. I have one question.
Yes.
In formulating the strategic plan back in, what was it, 2009 or 10, when it was, the board had opportunity to just sit in on some of the committee's work, just to see, not to comment, but just to oversee and show their support that, we value what work that they were doing, the committee. Will we have that opportunity in this timeline to do such a thing? This just not all at one time. I think there were several times when we had 1 or 2 board members attend just to see the dynamics and show their support for formulating the committee and getting it moving, and just seeing the dynamics of that committee working.
We could certainly arrange that. I know that you visited, a couple of you visited during the elementary boundary process. I think it was nicely handled. I think that you went in understanding that it was not a good idea for you to actually, give recommendations or start in the conversation, because it will change the work of the committee when you do that. But I think the committee would appreciate seeing you and hearing that you're supportive of what they're up to. So we could arrange that.
That would be nice if you could give the board a heads up on the meeting times, and then we can coordinate so that it's only one or two of us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Never a special meeting.
Right.
Any further, Director Lassane? I wanted to point out a couple things real quick, if I may. First of all, on slide 12 regarding taxes, prior to our last conversation, we had talked about not a guiding principle, but what do I want to call it?
Instruction.
Yeah, an instruction
Yes.
about not raising tax rates, because that was what our last conversation was at our previous meeting. And I think where we landed in moving it to a guiding principle was the complexities of the tax rate are so, there's so many variables that when we said we don't want to raise taxes, we're like, well, what tax rate? Is it today's tax rate? Is it going to be the tax rate, next year? Is it, and we don't really know where it's all going to land based on, AV values, on and on. And so what we did is we put it in there as a guiding principle that certainly taxes, the sensitivity to the community, and just something to consider as the package comes together. And I'm sure Mr. Moore is going to do a fabulous job of leading them through all the variables of the different tax structures.
And by we, you mean, for the record, the superintendent during the agenda setting process, given the comments by the board members in the discussion, the two board members.
Yes.
Yes, that was the conversation.
That's we.
And then I have a question, and I don't know why I didn't catch this earlier, but I'm looking at slide 4, and the committee does its work, and then the committee gives a recommendation to the superintendent, which then he brings to us in our summer workshop. And then we have the option to, in September or October, essentially approve the committee's recommendation or not approve it. And then we get community engagement. And it seemed that the way that we did, for example, the boundary change is there's a proposal on the table, and then we sort of ask the community about it before the board makes a decision. And, the online component of that makes for such a easy way to gather themes of a proposal versus solidifying a proposal and then going out to your community. And so I guess I personally would like to see that. I know, summer's not a great time to get a lot of feedback because of vacations, but we did actually get a fair amount. Now, maybe we got more feedback on the boundary revisions because families are so impacted and a bond proposal might not be that way. But I would like to explore opportunities to get that kind of feedback before the board actually makes that final decision.
And you certainly would. This schedule was in no way meant to be the only things that happen during that time frame.
Okay.
For example, community engagement will be occurring during the committee's work as well.
Well, that's what I
And
would
then
think. Yeah.
when the superintendent recommendation goes to the board, there will be community input on that as well. So there will be other opportunities and times we would be soliciting input from the community, certainly.
Okay.
But we will note that.
Thank you for
want
that clarification.
Yes.
Director Andrews?
No, looking at the schedule too. So the committee finishes their work in June and we don't look at it until August. We actually have meetings in June and July. Are you looking at it sooner?
I thought during that time we would be getting community engagement on that.
So the committee delivers to the superintendent in June. Correct?
Yes.
And then the superintendent has, then.
The idea was the
I think the
superintendent.
turnaround for the July meeting is too short to then turn around and offer a final proposal or your proposal to the board would be my understanding.
I think we heard pretty clearly from you that you didn't want to do any processing over the summer because people aren't around and you didn't want people to think that you were processing while they were away. That was we heard that to be a clear value on your part.
July's a pretty strong vacation month in the school district. I'm comfortable with August.
Because August is really, I know the picture shows the beginning of August. We usually have our retreat sometime at the end of August.
So we won't.
I'm not sure that's the exact date in August where we're going to see that green line.
Yeah, the green line is early.
We won't even see the recommendation until August, or will we?
Well, you can see it anytime you want to.
The community will see it. It will be out.
It'll
The
be on the
committee
website.
recommendation will be in. It will be publicized.
In June?
Yes.
We're gonna,
Okay, I'm
yeah, we'll
sorry,
put
I
the,
missed-
we'll put the recommendation to me on the website.
On the website.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm missing that whole
And I think the opportunity to review it at our summer workshop is nice because we'll have the time
We'll
to
have the
discuss
time.
and
I think-
mull over it.
I think it's worth sort of thinking about engagement in phases. There is a distinct and very involved phase throughout the committee's work. There is a very distinct phase after your decision because you've got to tell people what they're voting for. And then in between those two, you can choose whether you want additional engagement and how much more engagement you want after the committee's made you a recommendation that you've asked them to spend all that time on. And one of the political questions you have to ask yourselves is, once you've gone through this process and set up a very large committee and engaged lots of people, how much engagement around your decision do you want to make happen? And you should probably get that settled before the committee does its work so that they know whether or not, so they know really how much are you giving them in the way of, well, I hesitate to use the word authority, but how much of that task are you, because that's what you wanted to do with this purpose of this thing was to have people give you this, right? So then the question you have to ask yourself is, how much more massaging and work do you want to do with it? And that's a worthwhile question to consider over the next several months.
Director Nankar?
No, I've got no questions at this point.
Okay. No questions, okay. Okay, with no further questions, then I would entertain a motion to adopt Resolution 1187, Formation, Instructions, and Guiding Principles for a Capital Bond Planning Committee.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to adopt Resolution 1187. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll now move to section 14.0, new business, and we have one policy for review tonight, policy 3116, students in foster care. Mr. Fleckenstein.
The proposed new policy 3116, students in out-of-home foster care, is presented this evening for the board's consideration to comply with the requirements set forth by the Every Student Succeeds Act and all applicable laws in the Revised Code of Washington. Using the WASDA model policy as a foundation, the proposed new policy operationalizes our district's core values of equity and integrity. by mitigating or eliminating the barriers that may disrupt or impede the education of our students living in out-of-home care. This policy directly addresses the barriers our foster care students may face during this difficult time of transition that include student enrollment, transfer of student records, access to free or reduced price meals, and student transportation. The proposed new policy 3116, students in out-of-home foster care, has been reviewed by legal counsel and the superintendent's cabinet prior to tonight's meeting.
Thank you. Do any directors have questions regarding this new policy?
I do. I'm just wondering, is foster care defined narrowly, or is it like any homeless student, or is it someone who is in legal foster care?
You are correct. What may be, this is a very similar policy to your education of homeless students policy, both in the policy and procedural language. The distinction, as you have pointed out, is that the students are governed by somebody appointed by the state in this particular policy, which makes it distinctly different than the situations of students who are in homelessness situations. They may still have a parent guardian, they just don't have a physical place to live.
I asked that question just because of the language out of home or foster care. So maybe the question too is how does out of home care differ from foster care?
Yeah, so out of home care might be a decision by which a student is removed from their place of residence or under a parent or guardianship's supervision before they are placed into a foster care home. Okay. So that's why the title, we are recommending it say students in out of home or foster care.
And this would include, like, there are so many kids that are taken out of the home and placed with a grandparent or something like that.
Sometimes that is a temporary placement.
Yeah.
That becomes solidified later on, where they take guardianship of the student legally. Yeah, this would cover that same situation.
That situation, okay.
Any further questions? Okay, with that, we will move this to second reading. Thank you very much. Okay, we are on to section 15.0, upcoming agenda items. Dr. Cohn, please share our upcoming items.
Thank you
and
very
meetings.
much. Item 15.1 is a special meeting September 27. It is the Economic Alliance Snohomish STEM Summit. And my note here says that Caroline, Carol, and Pam have confirmed their attendance. I did not. And then the next question is whether or not John Myung will be attending. It was a maybe. You're not going either. Oh.
Sorry.
Okay, that's all right. So Caroline's not going, Carol's not going, Pam is going. So never mind this. It's not a meeting anymore.
I was wondering, I saw that and I thought, oh.
That's okay. That was, that's why we put it here, so that we're clear. Do you know whether you?
I was debating because I might have registered through my other work.
With Community Transit?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. That's fine. So since there's only two, that doesn't matter. If there were already two and you were the third, it wouldn't matter whether you were with them or with us. There'd still be three of you there.
Yeah.
Okay. So we won't worry about that one. So we'll take that special meeting off.
Can we get a calendar reminder for that one? Oh, we did? Okay.
Sure. We can resend.
And we know Tracy's out of town. Is that what?
So the note that I have says that you're the ones who responded.
Okay.
It may be that since,
that's good.
To our knowledge, that Tracy hasn't responded. But so we'll take that special meeting off. Item 15.2 is the reschedule of the student performance and EES trends review that's done by the outside firm that does that analysis for us. That's going to be Thursday, October 4, 6 to 8:30, and it's here at the Resource Center. At this point, Caroline, Carol, Pam, and Tracy are attending.
What time is it?
No, it would be 6 to 8:30. Would it? It would be.
It's 4:30 to 6:30.
It would be the normal time for. I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm looking at a different thing on the page versus the screen.
Sorry.
I apologize. This meeting's at the normal time, 15-2, special meeting October 2, regular time, right? And the next item is special meeting October 4, which was what I was looking at on this piece of paper here, is here at the Community Resource Center, 6 to 8:30 p.m. I have Caroline, Carol, Pam, and Tracy attending. John Young says not available. I will be here, and I'll be doing a 10-minute introduction, welcome, sort of a thing. No building tours. We've reconfirmed like 2 or 3 times. No building tours. Item 15.4 is the Economic Alliance Public Officials Reception. No, it's not. I'm sorry. I apologize. Again, I'm working off 2 different things here. Let me go. 15.4 is a regular meeting. It's the 9th of October, and you have a summer school report. We moved that up, and staff are going to be working to pull that together for you. You got second reading on the policy that you just heard today, and the item that's on our calendar for general operating business is the Gertrude Jackson Fund Board approval, which is one of your responsibilities under the provisions of the trust.
This is just establishing membership, correct?
Say again?
Membership.
Correct
board.
On that board?
Okay,
Yes.
gotcha.
Yes. It's in your consent agenda. I think it's every year. And then I have a note on my piece of paper here, and that we've got an Economic Alliance Public Officials Reception coming up October 16 at 4:30. Caroline and I are going. It's at Payne Field, and I wanted to double check to see whether any of the rest of you were planning to go to that.
Yeah, and I'm going, but from the other side.
Okay.
He needs to know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't have.
Time is 4:30 to 6:30 at Payne Field at the new facility. It'd be fun.
I'd love to go, but I'm not quite sure
Okay.
about that date yet.
I'm uncertain.
So,
No,
say again?
no published meeting.
Let me go there. Let me get there in just a second. So, Carol, you're a maybe on the 16th? And Pam,
I don't know,
you're a no, and you are a maybe.
maybe.
Okay, and we'll double check with Tracy, and we'll let you know if more than 2 of you are going. Your question is about the 28th. You have a closed session on the 28th, and I might as well just do that for a moment right now. Executive sessions are portions of open public meetings that the board excuses the public from attending. There are very specific reasons, and it is part of the Open Public Meetings Act. Closed sessions are meetings of the board not subject to the Open Public Meetings Act, and sometimes we do them when we have a regular meeting. They are not meetings, again, that are subject to the OPMA. Therefore, they do not require an agenda, publication, or minutes. So this particular item on the 28th is a closed session. You are acting as a quasi-judicial body. You are hearing an appeal from a student's parent. And as far as I know, there are 3 of you attending only. Caroline's not there. John Young's not there. Carol is. Pam is. Tracy is. Okay. I'm going to recommend tonight, because you're going to have a closed session, that you go ahead and adjourn tonight's meeting. Not just recess, but just adjourn it. And then we're going to go ahead and move to a conference room on the 2nd floor in order to conduct tonight's bargaining parameters discussion, which is one of the 3 reasons that you would have closed sessions: student appeals, staff appeals, bargaining.
I think we're good.
Fantastic.
We have our upcoming agenda items well covered. So again, as you mentioned, we do have a closed session tonight to discuss the parameters of a collective bargaining agreement. And with that, we move to adjournment, and that concludes the business to come before Everett Public Schools Board of Directors. We are adjourned.
Thank you.